So I don't exactly have a clever way of getting into this sermon. Not a particular story or an anecdote or, God forbid, a joke. I really don't have a clever way to go into it except for to tell you about my last 2 weeks. So last week, I participated in a round table discussion with former Congressman Brad Schneider, with the governor of Connecticut, and with several organizations whose job it was to lobby for gun violence prevention. And it wasn't open to the public, so no public came. It was actually open to the press. And the governor of Connecticut was very, very compelling, very, very interesting. But the person who was there that really struck my heart was another gentleman whose name was Nate Pendleton. And Nate's daughter, hi Joe, you might have remembered, was the woman that was killed a week after she sang at the president's inauguration. And her father was there, Nate. Her mother's name is Cleopatra. She wasn't there. And Nate was all heart and passion. And the governor of Connecticut said, what we're lacking here is passion. So then I came to services and I spoke about the round table discussion, and every time when I talk about gun violence prevention, most of the congregation's eyes kind of glaze over, and some people get angry, why am I bringing politics into the synagogue, which we don't really do, not interested. And then every now and then someone pulls me inside and said, you're finally talking about something important. And then on, I believe it was Sunday, I get a text from Pastor Chris Harris. Pastor Chris Harris has been to our Bema several times. He has a church on the south side. We've been to his church several times. He went to Israel with AIPAC, which is the organization that lobbies for Israel. And when he was in Israel at AIPAC, he was introduced to an organization called Natal. Natal in Israel is an organization that helps people with post-traumatic stress disorder, mostly those who have taken in the rockets from the southern part of Israel. And as they were telling their story, Chris Harris stood up right in the middle of the debriefing and said, that's what's going on in my community in the south side. We have post-traumatic syndrome. I'm going to build, on the model of Natal, something just like this. And the Bronzeville Dream Center was conceived of. He's raised lots of money, and gotten several politicians on board for his Dream Center, and we are included in that Dream Center. Pastor Harris texted me and said, pray for us. My cousin was just at a barbecue and was shot to death, and my worker who works for Safe Passage, I hope you know what Safe Passage is, that's the people who stand and try to protect the children as they're trying to go to school, was wounded. Pray for my family and pray for my community. I sent out a message on Facebook to offer the prayers of our community to Pastor Harris. And then what happened in Oregon. And so here I am, the second Shabbat in a row, talking about it again. And I have to say, for the Constitution, 100% I'm in on the Constitution. And I don't understand why people need semi-automatic rifles. And I don't understand why people need ammunition for semi-automatic rifles. And I don't understand why there can't be a universal background check. You know there isn't one. It makes such sense that we all assume that there is. Some states have, some states don't. As it turns out, Oregon does have a background check. But there is no universal gun background check so that the governor from Connecticut made the point that when he went onto the airplane to get to Illinois, there was a universal background check. When he landed in Illinois, he could have gone to get a gun without a universal background check. And as Nate Pendleton pointed out at that round table, 90% of the guns used in violent acts on the south side of Chicago come from one of 4 stores. They know exactly where they come from. 3 in Illinois and 1 in Indiana. I don't understand why they're still in business. Maybe I'm naive, but I don't understand. And I'll tell you what else I don't understand. I don't understand why we don't care every single days of our lives. I don't understand why we don't vote on this issue. I don't understand why we have allowed our politicians to politicize this issue. I don't understand that one of the greatest countries in the world can't figure out how to keep our children safe. And I don't understand, and this is an indictment against us here on the North Shore, why we care when CNN tells us to care and don't care otherwise. Because down the street on the south side of Chicago, people are dying daily. It's a plague. And as the people have said on television, there are communities all over this United States that are anonymous to us, where gun violence is a plague. And I don't understand why we care about our children and don't care about theirs. And I don't understand our lack of sustained passion on this issue. Don't understand. And you may say, well, what is it that we can do? And I'll tell you, this BJBE is no longer safe passage for this topic. On this BJBE, we will be talking about it on a regular basis, and I challenge those who are involved in our social action network, some of them, I'm going to call a couple of them, to give me a list of names every week. And on our Kaddish list, we're going to mention the names of those who die on the south side from senseless gun violence. Now, these issues are very complex. And you can say, yeah, but you know, he bought them legally over there in Oregon. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the last attack was all about. What it matters is that there are too many guns in the hands of too many people, and too many of the wrong people. Now, we know that issues of mental health are very complicated. And we also know that 99% of the people who suffer from mental health issues are not violent. As a matter of fact, most angry men are not violent, don't take guns into schools. But we also know that if a parent has an adult child and that parent is afraid because that child has gone off his medication or has signs and warning, that parent is not allowed to intervene on that child's behalf because he is now an adult. We do know that. And we also know, going from mental health issues to the issue of gangs, that it is a badge of honor to have a gun if you're in a gang. And there's something about the way that those communities are socialized that it doesn't seem to matter to us. We are not allowed to say that we love the city of Chicago and exclude neighborhoods. We are not allowed to say we are proud to be in Chicago. We lived there when we were kids. We moved to the North Shore to bring up our children. Oh, but let's go to Wicker Park for dinner. When you won't step foot 5 miles down the road because you're afraid. We have to love all of Chicago, including those parts of Chicago that are dangerous. We have to join with Pastor Chris Harris, Pastor Ragland, all of our friends down at the South Side, and tell them that we care and we have to have sustained passion about this issue, not only when CNN tells us to. This morning across my email, I subscribe to a daily mindfulness poem. And the editor of the poem of the network said she pulled the poem that she was going to put, and with permission for Teddy Macker, brought this poem. And I want to end with this, because this, to me, is our call. So I'm going to read it through once, and then I'm going to explain it. Dear Lord, in this time of darkness, help us see the darkness. Dear Lord, help us not pretend, no more pretending. Dear Lord, may our gaze be defenseless and unshareable, shardable. Teach us the piety of an open eye. Dear Lord, in this time of darkness, may we be unafraid to mourn and together and hugely. May dignity lose its scaffolding, faces crumble like bricks. Dear Lord, let grief come to grief. And then, O Lord, help us to see the bees yet in the lavender, and the spokes of sunlight down through the oaks, and the sleep-opened face of the beloved, and the afternoon all around her, and her small freckles. Now let me tell you what the poem means, because poetry is hard for some people. And this is what I want us to do. What this poem is asking us to do. Dear God, in this time of darkness, help us see darkness. Because it's dark out there. In those neighborhoods down on the south side of Chicago, they don't expect to live into old age. There are whole communities that don't expect not to go to jail. That can't be okay with us. Dear Lord, help us not to pretend. No more pretending that it is okay. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to say at the B'nai Mitzvah tomorrow morning and in the afternoon. And this is what I've been saying every week for the last months. You know what privilege is? I'm talking to these kids right here. I'll tell you exactly what it means to be privileged. What it means to be privileged is to grow up in love and safety. That's it. And you're privileged because there are a lot of kids that aren't. No more pretending. Dear Lord, may our gaze be defenseless and unshareable. I'm not going to turn my head away from this. I'm not going to turn the television off. And when this dies down and we no longer talk about Oregon, I am not going to stop talking about it. Teach us the piety of an open eye. We cannot be blind to the suffering of this world. We cannot be blind to the suffering of our neighbors. Do not stand by idly when your neighbor bleeds. That's from the Torah. It's time we obey that commandment. Dear Lord, in this time of darkness, may we be unafraid to mourn and together and hugely. We should be crying right now. 18 years old. For the children. May dignity lose its scaffolding. Now, scaffold holds things up. So may dignity lose its scaffolding. May my dignity be crumbled a little bit, may lost a little bit. Because how can I live a dignified life when what is going on in the world is going on in the world? And how can my face not crumble like bricks that fall down? Everything that we hold to be true and dear is destroyed all around us. And I don't understand why we don't care. All the time. Dear Lord, let grief come to grief. But then the poem changes. And this is where we hold as people of faith. This is where our indignation also turns into hope. Because we have to be indignant about what is going on. We have to be angry about what's going on, but also hold the hope. And he says, and then, Lord, help us to see the bees yet in the lavender. Because what a beautiful sight that is. The purple lavender and the bees continuing with life and the spokes of sunlight through the oaks and the sleep open face of a beloved. Because thank God, I live in a world of love. And the afternoon all around her. And our child's small, freckled hands. Because life is truly good and beautiful and worth living for all of us. For all of us. Am I my brother's keeper? Absolutely. Absolutely. Somehow, we have to find the way to sustain our passion. On Yom Kippur, I talked about the imperative to have an imperative. This life we live must be about something other than our own personal self-interest. We have got to care how this unfolds before us. It has to be our business what happens down there. Thank God we know Reverend Ragland, and thank God we know Chris Harris, because they can put a personal face on this. His cousin was at a barbecue. Not in a gang, at a barbecue. The woman who was injured spends her volunteer time, can you imagine doing this? Guarding children as they walk from here to there so that they can go to school. And you know that every year we hear on the news that kids who were in the safe passage alleys were still shot, or in their basements playing, or in their living rooms watching TV. We have to care about this issue all the time. Now, I know I haven't given concrete solutions, and I know that there is complexity, but I also know that there is politics for the sake of politics, and I also know that when there is a will, there is absolutely a way, and that we have the resources to transform this society into a society where there are less homicides. And I know that what happens on the South Side is different than what's happening in Oregon, which is different, which is happening on an army base, which is different that happened to the reporters on television. And I know that we can't connect the dots except to connect the dots, because people are dying around us. And we have to care. And in conclusion, for this moment now, unless I'm compelled to speak to it again next week, we are in the holiday of Sukkot. We've sung several times here, spread over us a canopy of peace. This bima is so beautifully decorated in Sukkot, a holiday which talks about the world being surrounded by love and peace. God, guide my steps so that I may live unafraid. You don't get to live unafraid if your neighbor's not going to make it to 21. You don't get that. So let it be said now, right now, on this holiday of Sukkot, this year, this congregation, this small little corner of our world will dedicate itself and let darkness be darkness and grief be grief. And when the bees are in the lavender, sing the joy and beauty of creation, and will not keep silent and still until something is done and some light is brought into this world. And I expect you now to say amen.